Welcome back to You Must Be Woken, the podcast where we have honest and sometimes tough conversations on the topics of inclusion, leadership and culture.
And today we're continuing our special International Women's Day mini-series, Give to Gain. We're exploring the multiplier effect that happens when leaders invest their power and resources and the fine print that comes with it.
And in today's episode, we tackled the network. Is the give always about time, or is it about the emotional labour of pulling out chairs for the next generation?
And over this series, we've been talking to leaders who navigated these trade-offs and found growth on the other side. And I've got the pleasure today of welcoming Jules McKittrick, who's the Chief Risk and Compliance Officer at Summer. Welcome, Jules.
Thank you very much.
Now, Jules, before we get into the messy stuff, we have to look at our Woking tradition for this series, the 60-second CV. And you've got 1 minute to tell us who you are and what you do, the high gloss version.
No pressure. Clock's ticking.
Right. Okay. Well, you've already said I'm currently the Chief Risk and Compliance Officer for Summer. We're a relatively new business, a professional services business, where we provide accountancy and other business support to SMEs around UK and Ireland. I've come to the profession through lots of different angles. I actually started out as a marketeer. Joined Ernst & Young to support them with some of their marketing initiatives, and really looked over the fence at what their professional staff, as they were known, were doing, and was very interested in that sort of work. And so I suppose that's the first time I kind of sought out a mentor and said, I'm quite interested in doing that kind of work. I think I could do it. Will you help me retrain to do it? And so I got huge support. I was marched off to HR, and the partner I spoke to said, she wants to join. Can you make it happen? And I was very willingly went back to being a graduate and did my training, and had a really great time being in professional services. Had a little bit of time out and went into industry. So a couple of stints in retail and passenger transport, but then the lure of professional services kind of appears over just under 3 years ago now, and I'm very happy to be back in the profession.
Love that. Just like that old movie, isn't it? Every time you try and get out, they drag you back in. So that's the glossy version of your CV, Jules, right? That's the bit that gets you the keynote speeches and gets you invited on podcasts like this one. What we really want to know, what our listeners really want to know, is what would you tell us about your CV if Don and I just met you for a drink in a pub at 7:00 on a nasty Tuesday evening? What would change about your CV in that scenario?
Well, I think, in all honesty, a key theme of my CV is variety, and I think throwing myself into situations where the job description isn't perfectly formed. I think it's fair to say, in the last 15 years of my career, I've taken a role where, well, first and foremost, I haven't been handed a job description. I've been handed an idea, and in that idea, it's, we think we want to do this. We think you've got the skills to do it. How about giving it a go? And I think because I'd spent so much time in professional services where you just have so much variety and you have to learn quickly, I've thrown myself into those opportunities, really. And so I guess fast-paced, just in a constant state of learning. I mean, that's one thing that if that ever stops, then I'm done. I'm out. I'm on to the next thing, really.
Boredom, yeah. Dawn, it sounds very familiar to our roles.
It does. Every year we have a learning theme, don't we? And they're usually polar opposites, but it's always good fun.
Brilliant.
Looking back to when you first stepped into the boardroom, Jules, what was the price that women were expected to pay just to be in that room? And as we sit here in 2026, what's the biggest change you've seen in what we have to give up?
Gosh, I mean, that's a really tricky question, I think. Because, if I think back to actually the first time I did step foot in a boardroom, it was actually when I was about 17 and I was fundraising to go on an expedition and I was desperate to get the final chunk of funding. And so I walked into a boardroom that ticked every box of the stereotype in terms of the big long kind of dark wood table. It was a business actually in Liverpool. It was a property business, and the boardroom was full of men. And I suppose that's clearly something that's changed over time. Um, so um, I mean, I don't know. I'm not really sure I know how to answer you know what have you had to give up? I mean, it's certainly my time, more recently in a more senior role. There's certainly an element of you can't see the role as a 9 to 5. Your time isn't necessarily your own, and so really, one thing that I suppose maybe I'm giving up, the rigid structure of a working day by being,
Mm.
a kind of a member of a more senior team, and so the 9 to 5 absolutely not the case, and that willingness to be, I think, flexible with your time, not to a point where you give it all the hours of the day, but certainly, yeah, 9 to 5 just doesn't exist really.
It's a common theme we're hearing, actually, time. And I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit more later.
Yeah, definitely. I think we've heard it more than once, but I'm sure we'll come back to it. Okay, so I'm really conscious this year for International Women's Day, the theme is very much this give to gain. So tell us about a specific moment where you were either given a seat yourself that maybe you didn't think you were ready for. So we're obviously trying to take a slightly different view of this year's theme, or perhaps when you've pulled the chair out for somebody else. Um, what was the reason? What was the breakthrough? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, yeah. So I'll spare the blushes of the individual I'm going to mention, but there was a time when I was doing a role in one of the retail businesses, and there was an individual who was just very good at their job. So came in every day, sat at their computer, did their work, logged out, went home. And I just saw something in this individual that was just underused. And and it puzzled me because I saw that this person had lots of potential but wasn't really pushing themselves. And so when I then had a role in a different organization, again, part of this kind of come in and help set up this division within the business, I called up this individual, and this person didn't really know me that well. So we kind of saw each other and we were kind of friendly and we'd wave in the office, but we'd never actually worked together. But I just saw something in this person. So I called them up and I said, look, I'm trying to figure out this new role. I've got pretty much a blank sheet. Do you fancy coming and helping give it a go? And that person went, yeah, okay, let's try it. And they did, and they really succeeded in it. And so much so that I'm actually working with this person now for the second time. So, but as I've moved, the person's come with me, and we've worked together really well ever since.
I love that. There's a quite a big theme about that kind of relationship forming, isn't there? Because Dawn and I got together through very similar circumstances. Dawn and I. Many people would have heard this on the pod before, but I used to be one of Dawn's clients. And then when I'd left my last exec role, Dawn rang me up and said, I'm thinking about this. Why don't you come and
Yeah,
see? And why don't you come? And I said, oh, I'm not sure. And anyway, here we are 10 years later doing podcasts together and I'm still driving her mad. But yeah, it's quite interesting, isn't it? How those kind of relationships form.
yeah.
So important. So
Love that.
important. So let's play a game, Jules. and this is called the Woking Audit. And Craig and I are going to list some things that leaders often give to get ahead. And you tell us if you would keep it because it made you who you are, or you would refund it because it isn't worth the cost. Okay, so
Okay.
keep or refund.
Well, what we're doing throughout this mini series is we're going to get the themes together of what everybody's keeping or refunding in the final episode. So I'll start us off. The 5 a.m. start to get ahead of the inbox.
Keep.
Ooh, interesting.
Moving your life to a new city for a promotion.
Keep.
Okay. Filtering your personality or toning it down for the boardroom.
Refund.
Oh.
Working through a family vacation because only you could do the task.
Refund.
We're also getting some key themes coming through on that one, aren't
we? Absolutely. Oh, so if we were speaking to that young woman who's listening, who's being told she has to give it all to be a leader, what's the one thing she should refuse to give up, no matter how big the gain is?
I'd say bringing her voice to the table. This one I find it is a really interesting question because it's very easy to conform when you get into a more senior role, and it sometimes becomes harder to be that lone voice. But I really do strongly think that some of the best ideas can come through being that lone voice, through seeing things from a different perspective, to just not following that pack. I think that's where you can get the real kind of variety, where there's it could be that there's a seed of one idea that then somebody can kind of build on and pick up from. So I think for me that that voice, that bringing that different perspective, in my mind, I think that's hugely valuable.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to be a bit controversial here, right? Maybe. Doesn't sound like me, I know. But I guess one of the things I hear quite a lot, right, about women, and you both here, please feel free to correct me or tell me to shut up if I'm going off on a bit of a tangent here. But we hear quite a lot the term microaggressions, right? Particularly in boardrooms or in meeting environments where, I don't know, maybe a female puts forward an idea and then it gets talked over. And then 2 minutes later, Craig sat at the end of the table, says exactly the same idea. And everybody goes, hey, Craig, what a great idea, right? Is that still a reality, do you think, in 2026? Or have we moved beyond microaggressions? Because it kind of links into what you were saying about your voice there, Jules, right? Even if you have a voice, you've still got to be heard. Right?
Yeah. I think very sadly that is ever present. I
Wow.
do see it, and I'm shocked by it. I think that that 17-year-old walking into that boardroom way back, and I don't mind saying now I'm 51 now. You would expect there to have been a big leap of change there, and I'd love to know what it is, because I don't think it's intentional.
Yeah.
And I'd love to know how you hold the mirror up to that, to really, because I think people would be shocked by that if they actually knew that it was happening in that moment. So I think it's a massive blind spot, and I mean, as you say, Craig, unfortunately, it is typically men who will behave in that way, and it's
Yeah.
hugely frustrating that it is still in
Yeah.
existence.
And I just want to, sorry, Dawn, go on. Jumping in again, aren't I? Getting excited.
I was just going to add to that, because I was going to say, some of the most powerful people who have supported me in my career have been men, but male allies who have been comfortable to step in at that point where somebody is taking the credit or is talking over me, to say, hold on a moment, I don't think we've finished yet.
Yeah.
And I have found that much more powerful than anything scripted.
Yeah.
Nice. I was going to say something similar. I think because I guess leaning into what you said there, Jules, as well. You know, I don't think men do it intentionally, right?
No,
And
I
he
don't think they
says because
do.
I'm sure there's probably been times in my career, right, where I've done it, and again, there's never any intent in that. Particularly for a mad Welshman like myself, I get quite animated and excited, and I overtake conversations and things, and there's genuinely no malice in it. It's usually come from a place of passion more than anything else. And I can't speak for all men, I'm sure. But I guess what would you recommend those tips are for people, or both of you? This question's too, by the way, to help us be a bit more aware of that. Because I know I when I'm aware of these things, I do then try and make a conscious effort when I'm in the environment to kind of listen for it from other people or even for myself and just try and take a breather. But I wonder if there's any kind of tips that we could offer people to say, here's how you be a better ally, here's how you do that stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think certainly in my experience, where I've called it out, it's usually relied on the relationships that you have with the individuals around that table. And so
Mm.
though there have been times when I will quite simply say, "Yes, I just said that," and and actually you can see there is an immediate like, oh, and and I think it's just a disconnect between the kind of the listening and the brain potentially. But yeah, I mean that certainly that's what I've done in the past, but it just depends how polite the company is that you're in at the time.
Yeah, very
But
true.
I also think, I was always taught if you can't deliver your point in 3 sentences, it's not worth delivering. And I think as a female, we have to perfect that even more because, your point there, Craig, about dominating the conversation. If we haven't made impact often by the second sentence, people have moved on. Whereas
Yeah.
I have found that men in the boardroom get more grace with that.
Yeah, I was going to say there's very rarely I can get my point across in 3
Yeah,
sentences.
we're working on it, love. We're working on it.
Oh, bless. Anyway, this is not about Craig or men for that matter. This is International Women's Day, so we should probably probably move the conversation on a little bit. And I'm really keen, Jules, to just talk a little bit about some of the give that you've been doing recently. So you've been doing some work with EA on a culture program in recent months, particularly aimed at trying to understand the workplace that you're now in for women leaders. We've seen the give that you give to that program. We've benefited, we've gained from that as a project, as a team. But I'm really keen to understand from you why are you doing that? What's the why the investment? What's driving this kind of need?
Yeah, there's a few reasons really. So I think first of all, one bit of context that I didn't set out at the start is we are highly acquisitive at the moment as a business, and so we are inheriting, if you like, lots of different cultures because
Mm,
we're requiring each of these accounting businesses around the UK and Ireland, and so what was really important for us in thinking about our D&I program as a whole, and then more specifically looking at the experience that women have within the summer world. We wanted to know where we were starting from, really, and I think that's where the culture audit really helps us. And taking some of the gut feel out of it and trying to get it into a bit more of a fact base, because bearing in mind I am working with lots of accountants, lots of auditors. They work inherently they work with fact, and so that's what was really crucial, to really understand that baseline, to really then help us to prioritize where then we think we can have the best impact for our women, and then further down the line for our D&I program more generally.
nice, love that. Have you found? So one of the things Dawn and I say quite a lot about culture, and I'm genuinely pleased that you've done the right way and done the audit first to find out what exists. But one of the things Dawn and I talk about is this acquisition model, right? So we do quite a lot of work internationally with organizations who are acquiring smaller organizations, bringing them together. And the point that you made there about cultures coming together is often an afterthought for these types of programs, because people focus on the kind of efficiencies they're going to make in the back office or in the financial, bringing these companies together, and then they underestimate how challenging it can be to bring cultures together, particularly if they're coming from different regions, different countries, these kind of things. You end up having the culture clash. So a lot of our work when it comes to acquisition work usually comes afterwards, because
Right.
organizations are reacting. And I guess the beauty of the work that we've done with Summer is that it's proactive, right? You're
Yeah.
deliberately trying to do that in a way that says, let's try and get ahead of this and make sure that we can set the right cultures and the right environments ahead of time. How have you found that process so far?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're in very, very early days. We've still got a lot to do in terms of the work that EA is supporting us with. I mean, I will say that the that culture assessment, pre EA, it was very much part of our due diligence, and so we're making that assessment of how different that culture might be, and if it's way off, then actually we don't do business. That's it's off
Nice.
the table. It's really important that we think we can work with that culture that we are inheriting. um, but yeah, I mean, certainly, we're really excited about the program of work that will come from having all of this amazing data in our hands. And what I really love about it is then our ability to say, right, we know where we're at now. We'll go and do a whole load of work to work on those improvement areas, and then to be able to come back and reassess. And I hope that we can really demonstrate that we've moved the dial on some of those important.
I kind of wasn't going in with the impact question yet, because to be fair, I'm working with Jules on this project, and we only delivered the first preliminary findings a couple of weeks ago. So even I'm a little premature in the impact question.
Well, in the interest of that and the interest of time, because I feel like we could carry this conversation on for hours and hours, let's move into our kind of final 4 rapid fire questions for you, Jules. We've been doing this with everybody as part of this mini series, because we're finding the answers really fascinating. We're sure our listeners will too. So I think, Dawn, you're going to start us off with these. You haven't got any time to think about these ones, Jules. You just got to go with your gut.
Okay, hit me.
So the first one is your undo button. If you could ungive one piece of advice, what would it be?
Well, actually, this isn't going to be my advice that I was given, but it was advice that was given to me, and it was when I was junior and didn't have a clue what I was doing. I went to my senior and I said, "Can you help me?" And his response was JFDI. And
Nice.
it's that has lived with me ever since, because I thought I'm never ever going to treat anybody like that.
Yeah.
Nice. Love that. Stick it in the bin. Okay, next one up then. What's a piece of standard advice that is actual rubbish that you would just get rid of it, throw it away completely?
So work really hard and your work will be recognized.
Oh, okay. Love that.
Mm,
Interesting.
fabulous. The gain. What's something you gained from a failure that you now won't trade for a success?
Mm.
Requires a bit of thinking, doesn't it?
Mm.
Um, I mean, there's certainly, if I think about one of my big failures, what was the theme of it was actually optimism. And so, really going into that, maybe a little bit too optimistic, and really thinking that, we really knew where we were going. We thought we had all the facts to our hands, and actually we didn't. And I learned a lot from that. I learned about tempering some of that kind of enthusiasm and optimism.
Mm.
Nice. Okay, and then the final one for you, and my personal favorite, your leadership style needs a walk-on song. What are you playing, Jules?
That's the one that just comes to mind immediately is "Don't Stop Me Now" by Queen.
I love
Classic.
that.
And in
Love
fact,
that.
may I add that we actually did a flash mob at our last leadership conference last year to Don't Stop Me Now.
There has to be some video evidence of this. You have
No
to share it with
video
us.
evidence whatsoever.
Brilliant.
Oh, wonderful.
There's one for our leadership event next year, Dawn.
I
We'll
love
get you
that.
in.
Yeah, absolutely. Bit of Freddie. Oh, well, I'm conscious
Brilliant.
of time. Thank you, Jules, for joining us on You Must Be Woking podcast and for being so honest about the receipts of your success. You can find more about Jules and her organisation's work in the show notes.
It's bye from me.
And it's bye from me.
And thank you. It's bye from me.
Thanks for watching and listening to You Must Be Woking, the podcast that cuts through the noise for all things diversity and inclusion. We pride ourselves on having the honest and sometimes tough conversations. So if you liked our discussions and content today, please hit the follow, like, and subscribe buttons. It really helps us to reach more listeners. And if you're feeling even more generous, why not leave us a review? It really is the best way for us to grow and help our content reach even more people.